Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second day of the 2024 Oromo Studies Association Annual Conference. Welcome back to those who were attending yesterday, and welcome to those who are able to attend today. Today, my name is Sudame Nagash, and I will be your convener for the conference. So we will be starting with panel 4, Harnessing Indigenous Wisdom for Peace and Empowerment. This panel will be moderated by Professor Stephen W. Thomas. Please welcome him to the stage. He's right there. I will be moderating the time, and for this panel, it's been allocated 1 hour and 20 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to panel number 4, Harnessing Indigenous Wisdom for Peace and Empowerment. Before I convene the panel, I want to point out that I was born and raised in California. Perry lives in California, and Asfa lives in California. So this is the California panel. Does anyone else from California want to represent? Yes, okay. So I'm going to introduce the speaker. First, I'm going to introduce both speakers, and then they can come up because they have a lot to say. So first is Perry Clem, who I think everyone knows, is a professor of art history at California State University, Northridge. Her research over the past 25 years has focused on identity, dress, and the body in Oromo. Her book, Dressing Modern Like Our Mothers, Dress, Identity, and Cultural Practice in Oromo on Africa World Press came out in 2022 with research support from a Fulbright Award and an Andrew Mellon grant. She co-curated the exhibition Bare Dina Women of Oromo with her students, which traveled throughout the US and Europe. In 2022, she received the Tashomi H. Gabriel Award for Outstanding Research and Scholarship in Africana Studies from UCSD. In 2023, she received the OSA Distinguished Award as well as an award by the Eastern Oromo Women's Organization for introducing Oromo culture through literature. Perry is currently a board member of the Cinque Institute, also the UCLA Consortium Editor of African Arts Journal, and the past president of the Council of the Africana Studies Association. What she's going to share with you today is some of her sabbatical research. She recently returned from her paper today, a case study in the Dola of Oromo, and part of her presentation. Our second presenter, Astronomy, I think everybody has known. Aspa was one of the first people I met at the World Studies Association conference. He's a professor of mechanical engineering at San Diego State University. He has been the co-author on more than 100 publications on the topic of thermodynamics, energy efficiency, global warming, and renewable energy. And he has been dedicated to OSA since its founding, and he currently serves on OSA's board of directors. So I will call Perry up to the stage. And his presentation today is updates on the Oromo calendar.
I might need some help just getting the screen onto there.
Video or presentation?
No, just a PowerPoint, and then the presentation is right there. So we can just go to the screen.
This one?
No, just to make it a screen big. Yeah, thank you. That'll work.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kabete. Thank you, Dr. Thomas, for your warm introduction. I want to correct one thing. I did not make film. I'm in the process of doing it. I'm not a filmmaker, so this is really a stretch for me. And so thank you for being here so I can show you a little bit of what I'm trying to accomplish, and would love feedback and help with, if anyone wants to get involved in this project, I'm very open to getting help. So today what I'd like to do is talk about filming I did recently in Oromia on Ateetee, looking at Hada Sike, carrying the Sike, practicing Ateetee. I'm a board member of the Sike Institute, and I decided to go and film Ateetee, thinking naively that I would just find it, and realized, in fact, that it is rarely being practiced today. So the film is more about why it's not being practiced and some of the complications. Because crisis is part of our title for this OSA symposium, I'm going to focus today on what I filmed in relation to crisis. In other words, the way in which Ateetee is being sabotaged in Oromia. And if there's time at the end, I will mention something more positive, which is the Addoyyee initiative that's happening right now, today, in online, and there'll be a ceremony in Washington, D.C. So I want to connect this also to what's happening in the diaspora. So the filming took place in February and March of this year in Danaba, a village out in the Dodola district of West RC zone. So here you're seeing Danaba again. And here is Ganata, another village where I filmed. What I'm going to do now is switch to showing you part of the film, introducing Ateetee, and then we'll look at these issues of crisis. I'm going to go ahead and talk over this, and we'll actually listen in a little bit, but just to set the stage. Now I can't see my paper. All right, let me see if I can get maybe my phone. That's great. Okay, thank you. Just the first one was fine. I just needed a little bit. So Ateetee is an institution run and organized by women. In the RC region, Ateetee, though declining, is still practiced to enforce a socially sanctioned set of rights. I spent time in Dodolo Oreda, in Ganata, exploring Ateetee, who practices it today and why it's declining, and that's what I'm trying to make a film about. So the Oromo women that you see here in the RC region of Ethiopia come together to perform Ateetee. It's a ritual of singing, dancing, praying, blessing, and sacrifice. Ateetee provides women with the means to bring their communities into peaceful relationships, socially, spiritually, and physically. They can settle disputes, stop violence, and intercede for rain and healthy children. Historically, women acted as peace arbitrators, placating warring parties, and at other times, they protected and defended that which is sacred. And when their prayers were answered, they performed Ateetee rituals of thanks. What you're seeing here is women and men coming together to perform Ateetee Fala. With the introduction of Christian and Islamic belief structures since the advent of the conquest of the Abyssinian Empire, the practice of Ateetee has declined. I visited Oromia to find out the nature of the practice. Have women's voices been silenced today, and how? A woman who has a grievance to settle will sound an alarm by holding Sinke, or the Sike stick. And this ritual is firmly rooted in the power of the Sinke stick each woman holds. The women call themselves Sike mothers or Hada Sike. By holding their ceremonial stick, the Sike, and singing their Ateetee songs, they bring about reconciliation. So for the next 3 minutes, we'll just listen in to this part of the Ateetee Fala. Two of the things that were important here beyond the Cinque stick is the milk that's going to be offered to the water, to the river Malca, and then the butter with coffee beans or coffee berries inside that's going to be offered. So you'll see the woman here is sending this over to the men. After blessings and offering milk, the women carried Sike back to the other side and then danced. So I want to turn now, that was sort of an introduction to Ateetee itself. I want to turn now to some of the things I recorded and experienced while there that I think is the crisis that I mentioned earlier. Play for just a moment, and then what I'll do is I'll stop and explain what's happening before you see each clip. So women that I interviewed in the circle there the first thing they talked about was the way in which the performance itself had been sabotaged. Women mentioned men coming up while they were dancing and putting holes into their capes. Women discuss the common reasons for tying madicha, tying the leather strip on their sike, to settle disputes between two men, to call out a husband who has beat his wife while she is wearing kanafa, to give thanks for the sacrifices they made, but there was more. So in the village of Ganata that you see here, there was a man who ululated as a way of making fun of the women, of poking fun at what they were doing, and ridiculed the tradition. And so here you're hearing the woman discuss this. So the sacred place where these women from Danaba practice their gamo, their sacred grounds, were illegally confiscated about 10 years ago, and they are actively trying to get it back. It was taken by the mayor, who felt pressure from the federal government to give it to a businessman from Shashamene. He has tried to construct a mill on the property, but basically it stood vacant for 10 years. So this woman is explaining it, and then you'll see them taking me to the site. And so this is the site. This is sacred not only because it's where their mothers and foremothers would practice Ateetee, but also because of a tree that was, a particular tree that was there where a metal object is buried underneath. Another example here, members of the Danaba Village, Gada and Sike associations took us to this holy site. It's a spring. It's sacred to the Oromo because there are 5 Oda trees there. But people from all over Ethiopia, as you're seeing in this footage, come here to heal physically, mentally, spiritually by bathing and drinking the water. I don't have this on video, but the women came to perform here, and there was a lot of hostility from the crowd. And when they were leaving, a Muslim cleric insulted them and said what they were doing was stupid practice. So I'm just showing you some of the site. We're back now in the village of Ganata, and what I want you to pay attention to is the purses that these women are carrying. There's a house there in the background. The house in the background is a compound where the women gathered. So women were called. Some of them were from here, some of them came from the outside. Those that came from the outside were getting ready in this compound, but the owner refused them access to the house, closed the windows, closed the doors, and fearing insult, they allowed the women to stay in the compound, but would not allow them to enter. So those women that came from the outside that you saw there were actually having. Let me just go a little further here. This is one more in my last example. We're now back in a village outside of Dodola, And what you're seeing here is a policeman has come to arrest a Hadasike, arrest the woman there in the center. And, sorry, the Abagada is protesting, as are the women, that you cannot take a woman who's holding Sinke, you cannot take her to court. She is sacred when she has that stick. And to arrest her while she's performing, practicing, holding it is not, is against Oromo law and Oromo policy. So I've shown some examples there with the holes in the robe, the making fun of their call, the taking away of the sacred ground, the insult, the attempted arrest, that all show the disrespect that women are experiencing when trying to practice. So I would ask you, what do women have if these practices are taken away? I want to end on a more hopeful note, and I'm happy to discuss any of the scenarios you just saw in the Q&A in terms of what the outcome was. But I do want to end on a hopeful note and mention also that in the diaspora, women and girls are feeling a sense of loss, not having the kinds of rituals and rituals of empowerment and so on. And so the Sinke Institute, one of the missions is to help to bring back some of the sense of female solidarity among women throughout the world. So we have researchers who are doing, bringing the Sinke model to places like Peru and Japan and so on. So I just wanted to end on an initiative that's happening now. Let me see if I can go back to my PowerPoint. I don't know quite where to find it. Let's see. If I can't find it, that's okay. And that is, I'll just explain a little bit of the history. So Dr. Kue Kumsa, who started the Sinke Institute, was approached by the DC Oromo community who said to her, you know, you have the Sinke Institute, you're doing things for women, but what are you doing for girls? What are you doing for girls as a sort of coming of age initiative, that kind of thing? And so she created this Addoyyee course with a full syllabus, a 5-week course that girls are now, it's a pilot project participating in. So today, this is the third Saturday, there'll be one more, and then there'll be an actual Addoyyee ritual in DC. So if I scroll, let me see if I can scroll through this to go to learn more. I'm not accessing the PowerPoint, so I'll just share some of the I think it's on here, I'm so sorry. So this initiative is an interesting one. I encourage you to go to the website and read more about it. It's something that, if successful, could be brought to Minnesota. It could be brought to all over the world, to Australia and so on, to help find, girls in particular, to be able to find a sense of solidarity. Addoyyee, right, is where two girls become locked or bonded in a friendship that they then carry on for life. And this is happening here and now, which I think is really wonderful. Let me try one more time just to see if I can find my final slide. Okay, let me see, maybe I can move it over from here to there. Yeah, I'll just read what I was going to show you in my image from the Sinki Institute, which is called the Addoyyee Initiative, syllabus for summer 2024. And the objective is this summer course offers an experiential learning of initiation into the Addoyyee institution of sisterhood. It engages initiates in the critical reclaiming of the Oromo traditional sisterhood and reframing it for the context of the Oromo diaspora. It explores both the practice of the sisterhood and the broader conceptual underpinnings. The 5-week course unfolds roughly following the traditional rhythms of seclusion and emergence, and also call and response. The first 3-4 weeks, the initiates co-learn in seclusion with elders and knowledge keepers. And in the 5th week, they take part in 2 activities. The first is an in-person celebration of Addoyyee initiation, where the initiates emerge from seclusion into the welcoming embrace of the community. The second is a vital event for post-ceremony reflections. So I will end there. Thank you so much for your time.
Dr. Kobbade Zoomii keessaa ba'uun barbaadu na gargaaruu dandeessaa? Qophii gochuun barbaade. USB kun barbaade. No, I want to overload.
Another one. Okay.
There you go. Yeah,
Second.
So let's see what happens. Dr. Kobbade, wrong screen. Okay. Pointer it up.
Pointer it in to driver.
Projecting. You have to set it. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, good. Do I have to, I think I have to use the speaker, right? Yeah. Takka takka achi deemu narra jira gaa. Na wajjin deemi yoo barbaadde kaameeraa kee. I tokko nan ga'u. Several years ago, Tani, I don't remember the year, I presented the Oromo calendar in San Francisco at the African Studies Association conference, and I also published in the Journal of Oromo Studies. It was rarely referenced and it kind of got forgotten, and I renewed my interest this year when I was invited by a group that is working on revitalizing the Gada system. And I, instead of coming with the old in the same presentation, I was very much fascinated by a new tool for lunar, solar observations. And I also got very interested in the Maya calendar. I don't have the time to go through the whole full spectrum of the presentation, but I will try to bring it in a summary form so that you will understand and hopefully get fascinated by what I was fascinated, the similarities between the Oromo calendar and the Maya calendar. And this is the content. By the way, this is the background exactly today if you are standing in Borana, this is what you will see. Not super clear, but I just wanted to share with you that everything I present as a PowerPoint with the tool is actually as if I'm standing in Yabello. So this is the sky that you would see in Yabello very early morning around or a little before 6 a.m. Why did I choose that? Because you will see most of the urges that we are going to talk about. This will be the content of my presentation. I'll show you the local view to make a point that is indeed, we have very powerful tools that we can pretend we are immersed in the position. I chose Yabello, but it could be Finfinne or it could be anywhere in the world. And I'll talk about how the moon, the sun, and the stars move such that they become a reference for the Oromo calendar or any other calendar for that matter. The sky, what do we see? What are 27 days? At least most of you know that Oromos have 27 named days. There are no weeks in the Oromo calendar. A week is a Judeo-Christian invention. It is not represented by any solar or lunar event. It's just a 7-day. You can make a week 10 days if you want. And the Mayas made it 20 days. And I'll talk about the Oromo calendar, the importance of Bitakara, what is it? And then finally I will make a conclusion. I should probably insert somewhere here that I'm also trying to compare the Oromo calendar with the Maya calendar. This is exactly today. This is what you see if you are standing in Yabello. Kuni Lammi is triangulum. This is Busan, the Pleiades. Sorsa, which is Aldebaran, Algajima, Bellatrix, and Walla Safe is a little bit outside of this perfect line, but nonetheless it is one of the 7 stars, and finally Sirius, which the Oromos call Basa. These stars, as you can see, is also on August 4, exactly from Yabello. And if you go out very early in the morning, this is what you will see. Notice that they are almost in a straight line. That line doesn't exist in the sky. I just wanted to show that those 7 stars form a fairly straight line in the sky. And how does the moon move around the earth? It's called a synchronized motion. The point, sorry. The point in this arrow is there is no arrow on the moon. The arrow is to show you that we only see, this is the earth rotating, fast rotating, but it is, one rotation is 1 day. The reason I put the arrow is to show you that we see only one side of the moon. We don't see the back side of the moon. This is very important as we proceed in our astronomy lesson. And you can see here that red point, in other words, that red point is always on the side of the earth. We never see the other side of the moon. And yet the moon rotates around the earth. In fact, it rotates once around the earth to make 1 month. What is the word month in Oromo? Jia. Jia means also the moon. So the Oromo month is lunar. And yet we will see that the year is solar, 365 days. If we only follow the lunar month by month, those who observe Ramadan will know that we cannot have a lunar month to constitute a year because there will be a seasonal shift. Bonni gannata, ganni bonata. So the year has to be solar. This is the mistake in Asmarom Legace's book that I pointed out to him at OSA once, and he accepted because in his book he introduced the Oromo calendar as if it is, the year is lunar. It is not lunar. So now we know that we know how the moon moves around the earth. Let's see how the 3 move. This looks like very busy. So I will need help. 2 people. Thank you. And very good. Let's assume one stand here, other stand just side by side. Let's say you are the moon. It's very complicated. Now you are going to move like the moon. Remember the first rule? You are the earth. You rotate around yourself and slowly move around the sun. Pretend Perry is the sun. So, but pretend that this is a big circle, so don't worry about where she sits. Or Perry, if you don't mind for a second, you can sit here because you are the sun now. We are in front of you. Now you have to be the moon, meaning at all times you face Steve. But now, Steve, you have to rotate around yourself and then around the sun. But remember, you rotate around Steve at all times facing him. So you slowly, I'll show you so that we make sense, not too fast. Just remember, you have to move around the sun too. So you make like this. You are moving around, but you are rotating around yourself. Now you rotate around, but all the time you face him. Let's go. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Now the problem is, you see, you are moving too fast and she could not chase you.
It's a problem I have a lot.
Okay, let's go slowly. Very slowly, but you have to rush. You have to rush. Very good. Very good. You get the idea, right? You get the idea, Gattani? Now, what happens is, If you see here, you guys can sit, thank you. There you can stay there or go back, it's okay. This blue one is the Earth, okay? The Earth, the blue one. If you see the moon, that's tiny dot right there, right there. So as the moon goes around the Earth, if I clearly show you, imagine this is the Earth rotating around itself and going around the moon. I will have to do this. I'm always, but at the end, the Earth has moved here, I have to face the Earth, and then I still have to face. De facto, I rotated around myself to keep showing only my face. But that's what makes this sinusoidal but circular motion. This is the moon's path. This is the moon's path. And this straight circle is the Earth's path. The Earth's path. So the two rotate in a fairly synchronized manner, which also means we will not see the backside of the moon. And the moon always has to keep rotating around the moon. So then there are three circles. We will link all these a little bit later. First, the year. The year has 365 days. It's a circle. It starts somewhere. We call it New Year. And then it goes all the way around 365 days. And then the month have two types. One is 27 days, ceremonial, like the Maya. I'll come to that in a bit. The other one, and the named lunar ceremonial months are here. 26, 27, it's hidden here, but it's 27. 27 named days. There are no weeks. We still have a problem in Afan Oromo when we try to name a week. It's not indigenous. A Tuesday is a problem because within 50 kilometers, Tuesday has different names all over Oromia. Some call it Fachasa, some call it Gabar Fachasa because the market is on Tuesday in that region, so they call it the market day. And then we have the lunar month. Remember, I already mentioned earlier, 29.5 days for the moon to complete a circle. Because the Earth is moving, remember? So the Earth, the moon has to chase the Earth. So it's 29.5 days. These are the three circles in the Oromo calendar. The Maya calendar also has three large interlocking circles. Interlocking meaning just like the Oromo calendar. The lunar month and the solar year, they are interlocked. So in the Maya calendar, there is a 13 numbers with 20 months and the solar year. This day, for example, is 4th Manik, and the third day, the first day of a month Manik. Here, which I copied from internet, 3. This day is 3 Manik and 14 of Pop. This is how they number their years. And by the way, they still celebrate their new year, which is on July 26th. And I'll come to that maybe on the next one. I don't want to make it too busy. The Oromo calendar also has 3 locks, as I mentioned earlier. And the Ayantu month has 27 days. The lunar has 29.5. And the solar has 365 days. The first lunar day on the month of Bitotesa, which is around March, and we have to be very careful when we translate Oromo calendar, which I see all over internet. calendars cannot be translated. The day doesn't start the day you start in the other calendar. They overlap. So Bitotesa, I intentionally put it because I could have translated it. It would have been around March. But any translation, calendar translation, is totally wrong in my opinion. And Guya Bitakara, if a certain number of the month and the Ayantu days, one of the 25 days, and the lunar, that day is Bitakara. That is the starting day of the recounting of the solar cycle. So every year we know that a new year starts on Bitakara. Bitakara is one of the 27 ceremonial days. The comparison is quite fascinating. On the left, I'll put the Oromo in the Maya calendar. 27 named days, these are ceremonial, only for religious and ceremonial purposes. And the Maya have 20 ceremonial days. Those days are named also. They do nothing, but they are for ceremonial purposes. They are not for functioning. They are not for government, etc. Names of 12 months of Ayantu months. 12 months. Here, names of 13 ceremonial months. Ceremonial cycle has 13 times 27 because it's 27 days, 351 days. That's Wagga. This is ceremonial. You guys don't know it because we didn't know it because we don't use it. Ceremonial cycle called the Solkin has 20 times 13, 260 days. So the ceremonial year of the Mayas ends in 260 days. You see, counting solar year is convenient for our purposes. For the ceremonial, they didn't care. They invented a new cycle. That's called the Zolkin cycle. A year has 9.5 times 12, 354 days, which astronomically known as, in astronomy, 11-degree shift. You'll be missing 11 more days. You need 11 more days for the solar year to complete. It is the accumulation of these 11 days, a shift between lunar and solar, that will create a mess if your calendar is lunar. 11 days this year, 11 days next year, 11 days in 10 months, you will have a month shift. So that is one of the problems. What makes the Oromo calendar very sophisticated is how do you accommodate the shift between the lunar month and the solar year. There is 11-degree shift. The Mayas don't have a problem. They have 360 days because remember the 20 named days? Now the solar month becomes 18. They have 18 months times 20. Come on, we don't need a calculator for that. 360. 20 times 18, 360 days. Does that remind something? How many more days left for the year? 5. Does that remind you some Agme? That's what they have. What is interesting is they call the 5 days Wayeb, days out of number. And they are very unlucky days. You don't marry, you don't go too far, that's very unlucky. It's a bad day. You pray, you pay back all your debts, you clean yourself, preparing for the New Year cycle. The 5 days are very unlucky days. The Oromos also have unlucky days. That's the whole purpose of having ceremonial month. And for example, Sorsa is unlucky. On Sorsa, you don't marry, you don't negotiate. It's a bad day, you don't plan long trips. If a person is born on that day, there are things you do to clean him out of that unlucky birth. Now, I captured Ayantu, and he said there is another day that is even more unlucky than Sorsa. But Sorsa for sure is unlucky. And these unlucky days are not randomly defined in Oromo. Oromos traditionally have a meaning for each day. There is a day when people were born. God created human beings. Then God created the moon. God created the animals. And then there is a day where the man stopped listening to waka. That is the unlucky day. Senegale, the evil day, the sin day. So I don't want to go too far on this. New Year is celebrated with new fire. In Oromo calendar, as Marom Legas wrote this, the entire Oromo people turn off their fire on a new day. Akakalesa, like for the new year. No fire. The entire country turns off the fire. The new fire is started on the New Year day, which in Ethiopia is copied as Maskal, and they put a fire all over the country, but traditionally it is migrated from the Gada system. So on that day, a new fire from Ichima friction that is distributed, that fire burns until the next Gada, New Year, until the next Gada, but this one is until the next year. Now remember the three interlocking circles. For that one interlocking cycle that's identified by the month, by the ceremonial day, and by the year, to come back, the combination to re-happen, for the Maya it takes 52 years. For the Oromo, this is my calculation, I have to recheck, it takes 30 years. In other words, remember 29.5 is a lunar month. We don't count 29 and a half. We either count 30 or 29. And remember the 11-degree shift? We have to spread that over the next months. So the Oromo month is variable. The lunar month, 29.5, next month you make it 30, and then 29, the average, it will oscillate around 29.5, but still creates 11-degree shift. And that has to somehow be accommodated. So why did the Oromos invent the 27 ceremonial days? That is fascinating. Why 27? I don't know about the Mayas, but I think this explains why 27 was picked. Now, this is full moon. Full moon is when the moon is on the other side of the earth, because we can see the reflection. Its full face can be seen as a reflection of light, lightens the moon. The moon is always on the back side of the moon. This is dark, this is day. Now, if you stop the Earth's rotation around the moon, around the Earth, stop it. Imagine for a second, the Earth is stationary. Now, it will take 27 days for the moon to go around and come back exactly to its position. Why is 29.5 then? Because the Earth is moving, it has to chase that motion. So it has 27 plus 2.5 days lunar month. But if the Earth did not rotate again, it will only take 27 days. That explains the 27 ceremonial days, which is in itself fascinating. How did they know? How did they know? It has to be a reference star. After 1 month, Gobana did not happen at the same position when they saw the star and the Gobana at the same time. If this is a straight line, you can make a reference and say, okay, this is my triangulum. Full moon is exactly overlapping the star, but after 1 month, the star and the distance between the moon is separate. So they could have known it that way. It's a speculation. Am I okay with time? So, so this is 27 days. The Earth has shifted here. You see that? It was here, full moon. But the Earth, next month, it will shift to this position, to 29.5 days from here. It goes around and then to this position. But 27 days, the second full moon will be shifted by 2.5 days, 29.5 days, because the Earth was here. Now it is here. This in astronomy, the 27th day is known as tropical month. I didn't invent it. It has a name, it's very well known. The 27th day, the assumption that the Earth is stationary, that 27th day is exactly 0.32 if you count it in daytimes, which is a reference to the Earth's self-rotation, and then the 29.53, to be very exact, it is 29.53. Out of customary talk, we just take it as 29.5. That is the synodic month that is also very well known in astronomy. Now, how does it work? This also looks complicated, but don't worry, it really is simple. You just have to open your mind and look at it. 5 minutes. I'm good. In that case, I will go to, because this is going to show you how the Oromo calendar works. If you see the full moon and triangulum, remember this side of the Earth is dark, this side is day. In March, that's March, you can see a full moon and you can also see triangulum at the same night. Now, as you move away from March to April, May, the night will be on that side and you cannot see triangulum. As you move here, you can only see triangulum in the evening. So there is only one place, somewhere in March, when you can see in the evening with the full moon, Mans triangulum, and that day is known as Bitag Ara. That is the reference point. That is when the cycle, solar cycle starts in Bitotessa, when the full moon and the triangulum are seen on the same night. Now, if that happens, it means I have completed 1 year cycle around the moon. Kanabiran Darba, because I had time, but you see, if you are, this only shows that if you are on the back side, even though it is dark, as you see here, the person standing here can't see the full moon, but he cannot see the star, because we cannot see through the Earth. And this explains the same thing. I'm trying to show a few months. This is for the month of November. Now the Earth is rotating this way. As the sun is here. This is the evening. In the evening, you can see triangulum, and you can also see full moon. That is in a different position, but during the daytime, of course, we cannot see the stars. What happened? Okay. So I have to use the... This is the same thing I'm trying to show. Different months when triangulum can be seen. This is to show you how the 3 calendars work. I'll go very quickly over this because I don't have much time. This is the European calendar, 31 days of March. And this is the lunar month. In 2023, full moon was on 7th March. March 1, March 2. Now I jump because it is too long. Instead of counting every number, I will jump from 7 to 26. I will do the same thing for the lunar Oromo month from M1 to M20. And for the Bitakara full moon, New Year Day, I will do the same thing for the ceremonial month. It will be 13. Now the European calendar ended, but the lunar month and the ceremonial Oromo month will continue until we get Sorsa, which was the unlucky day, and the lunar month will continue until M25, 26, 27, 28, 29 months, and then lunar month will restart. Ceremonial will continue at 1, and then 2, 3, 5, 6, 8 until it is 27. So these are the 3 interlocking cycles going on, and these are visibility of the stars. Let's go on because I don't have much time. Let's move on. I will try. Let's move on. This is, again, the Bitakara Day in 2023, the New Year Day. This is Triangulum. This is full moon. This is standing in Yabello. I relax. Now this is Bitakara. Why is it called Bita left? I think this is the line of the stars. The full moon is visible here on the right side, on the left side of the line of Urji. This is in October. Now in November, the line will be above the full moon. I think there is a switch from left to right. From right to left or right to left. So here it's on the right side. Here the lines are on the left side. I think that's why it is called Bitakara. It's my speculation and my conclusion. Ceremonial calendar has similarity to that of the Maya calendar. Both are ceremonial. 27 days of Oromo calendar are ceremonial, similar to the 20 named ceremonial days for Maya. The Oromo calendar has solar year, but the month is lunar. And I have proven this to be an error in Asmaro's book. There is an 11-degree shift which has to be accommodated, which makes adds complexity to the Oromo calendar. After 365 days, Triangulum could be visible, but full moon may not be. This imposes an additional moon cycle. In Oromo, they call Ginit Alte, meaning the month becomes longer to accommodate the 11-degree shift. And Bitakara can't be exactly after 365 days because the new moon may not have come yet. So to the last month to accommodate those shifts to make the year really lunar. Thank you very much. What was that? Thank you. Awesome.
So thank you very much. Invite them. We have how many minutes for questioning? 17 minutes? 17 minutes for questioning. And I'm going to begin by starting a question, and then I'm going to invite you all to raise your hand. And my question is for both of you, that I was wondering, what? And I was wondering for both of you, the connections that you see between the cultural traditions, such as the cultural traditions, Perry, that you discussed, and the calendar, Asfa, that you discussed. So I think there's a connection between many of the cultural traditions like Ateetee and Addoyyee and the ceremonies, and I think the battery is weak. So the question that I want to ask is about the connection between the calendar and the way of understanding the calendar and the sun and the moon, and of course agriculture, and how this connects with various cultural traditions that we have, such as the New Year and and the things like that. And so I wanted you to invite you both to speak to each other and connect your presentations. And then that's my only question. So then I'm going to ask the rest. Yes. Oh. No, I can do it. You do the camera.
I just wanted to comment on Perry's presentation. Also looking for a question. Okay. Yeah, actually, in the presentation there was a mention of the Addoyyee being arrested. I mean, the government people wanting to arrest Addoyyee and all the politics around that. And also there was a reference to the Islamic scholar or the cleric who was saying stuff. So I think those were mentions, but I just wanted to so this is a scholarly thing, so we have to also have questions and probably reflections on what you discussed or presented. In Oromia, we have different experiences when it comes to the Oromo culture in different parts of Oromia, right? There were areas where the Oromo cultural assets was diminishing, and there is an value. And there are areas where the cultural practices were preserved, and there were efforts to continue to preserve that, which whether that is the Protestant 20 years ago, the Islamic, so there was kind Islamic scholars or people who want to actually convert traditional Muslim believers into the the different form were especially against people who go and practice the traditional Islam, or people who were trying to revive. What I saw was, so in the presentation was those two things. The government failing to protect, and the Muslims being against the revival of that tradition.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Thank you, Ibrahim. That was great. I would add that both what the Muslims and the Christians have in common in this situation is that they are both serving their real God, which is money and capitalism. So that's how the thing goes. Do you have a question? No, go ahead. We have two more. We have three questions, and we need to give them time to answer.
Thank you very much. That was a beautiful presentation by both of you. I have a question first for Perry Clem. I enjoyed the presentation, the Ateetee. Now looking at it, I really appreciate it because back in the day, my mom also practiced Ateetee, and it was a beautiful thing. But what I wanted to ask you is, there's this feminist, I guess, woman right thinker, Kamala Puglisi. I don't know if you heard of her. She makes the point that one of the troubles in modern times, especially now, is that the sisterhood that a woman have exclusive to themselves, which is separated from outside world, like sisterhood. She cites the Italian family, for instance. They have this strong bond among the females, the relatives. They hang out together. They do laundries, and so they have their own separate domain, which is isolated from the men, and that kept the family and the woman's spiritual, I guess, value high, and created a strong bond. When I look at Ateetee, it may serve such, well, I guess she also correlate that to, for instance, the increasing divorce rate in modern society, the problem with the relationship. If such an institution like Ateetee could be adopted in modern time, how would that, one, in this globalization changing time, how would Ateetee during this present time be adapted? Because I don't think it could be practiced as it was, because things are changing. And what value would it bring to modern women, especially now with social media, the next coming generation? They're totally disconnected. How would that create connection among women? And the second question is for Professor Asfaw. Naannoo keenyatti iddoo baay'eetti namni kun abaluun urjii lakkaa akkana jedhaniiti warri keenya nutti himuu turan. Are they referring to the calendar that you mentioned? Or, I mean, they were revered part of the Oromo society, actually, where I came from. In some part, it has a negative connotation. Jarreen sun urjii lakkaa'uu jedhaniit maqaatti baasuu kaan immoo jarreen sun urjii lakkaa'u jedhaniit kabaja kennuuf.
Thank you, Lisa. We've had the penises have talked a lot, so now I'm gonna hand it over to.
Okay, thank you both. Perry, I enjoyed your presentation, and at the end when you said we should bring this to Minnesota, I think that's a great idea. We have youth organizations, the university, the communities that are already kind of bringing the youth together, so I think that's a perfect cohort. They're already looking for a way to connect to their culture, the community, and learn the language, and I think that's a good place to start, at least here for Minnesota. Dr. Asfaw, for spring break, I took Oromo to Cancun and we did a tour, and they taught us about the Mayan calendar. We went to Chichen Itza. And as I was going through those cities and learning about their culture, I wished that Oromia was free and I could take him there so he can learn our culture. But now seeing your presentation, this would be great for him because he could connect what he learned there and saying, okay, this is something that my people are doing as well. So How can we make this accessible to our youth? This presentation will probably go over his head, but I plan to show him when, the live stream. And also, are you organizing a celebration for Bitakara in March so we can do it online? I look forward.
All right. We only have 5 minutes for the panel, so I want to give the panelists time to respond. Well, we only have 5 minutes for the panel, but special guests.
Thank you. I have quick questions. I wanted to know how in the world of all the calendars you could compare, how you decided to compare the Oromo and the Mayan instead of the Chinese or the whatever else. And to Perry, I wanted to ask what you thought the influence of international culture was on the dress of the day.
Awesome.
I will make it very short. 5 minutes. I will take maybe 1 minute. The cultural connection that Steve, you asked, I think it's a given. Ateetee is a ceremonial institution, a ceremonial event, and therefore it should be under the ceremonial calendar. I'm pretty sure there are days that you will do the Ateetee and days that you don't. So the calendar governs, in my opinion, the entire ceremonial events as a calendar. Urji, Lakau, yes, those are people who know, understand the Oromo calendar, but the connotation, as you can imagine, has been misunderstood. Just like the word Kalu. Kalu, a very ceremonial, a very respected word, has been misconstrued and used for a different purpose. So the Urji Lakau or the Urji Raha or the Ayantu, different names. So yes, they are the ones who have degree of expertise, some better than others, but the word itself is not, it should not be like the Urji Lakau. It's a magician type of connotation given to the word that's wrong, and it's not an Oromo definition. How to make it popular, Alfase, I think the young should, there are so many powerful tools. Let's start from understanding how the calendar works. And that we can do even from the US. And then there are some very good books that have been, and articles that are being written. And by reading those, I think we can revive the Oromo calendar at least as a ceremonial tool. Finally, how did you end up picking the Maya calendar? That's very interesting, because I traveled in Latin America and they kept referring to this word, ceremonial. This is very catchy. Ceremonial, I know ceremonial calendar in the Oromo, and now ceremonial calendar in Maya, there is a link. So I tried to link those two. That's why I was interested in the Maya calendar. It'll be fascinating to go to these Chinese and other calendars. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll start from the end. Going to the Sync Institute website, you can find more out about Addoyyee. If you are interested in sponsoring it in your community, there's the issue of Ateetee, why practice it, and to Dr. Ibrahim's comment about the way in which the state and both, I would argue, both Christian and Muslim fundamentalism has begun to harden gender inequality. And the question about international, what's the international influence? That's partly there as well, right? So embedded in that, there's a whole complex set of things going on. But as gender inequality becomes more solidified through these fundamentalist practices and Ateetee is lost, I think it does really, really shift and change things in society. So I'm not suggesting that the practice that I filmed is in any way something that can just be revived here and now, but there are many forms of it. So social media was mentioned. That idea of call and response is so immediate for us there, right? So the idea of being able to have a network of sisters who you can call upon, who will drop what they're doing at a moment's notice and come to your aid, right? That's certainly a practice I think that could be implemented. So yeah, thank you though for the comments. I really appreciate that. Anyone that wants to help me with translation too, I'd be honored.
So I think we are actually out of time, yes. I know there's more questions in the audience there and more comments and things to say, but I hope we can find time during lunch to revisit the panelists. And now I think we should move on to the next panel since we're already an hour and a half behind schedule. Oopsie. Thank you all very much. Thank you. And your article. Right. Also, you should read Asfa's article on the topic.
All right, thank you so much to those speakers and those presentations. So next we'll be moving on to keynote remarks, which will be introduced by the OSA board chair. So please welcome him to the podium. So I'll be moderating the time, and the time allotted for this section will be 35 minutes.
Agabultani. I'm not going to have a long introduction of our keynote speaker because he will be introduced in detail in the next session. So I'll preserve that for the introducer. Just to mention a few things about Herbert Lewis. When we were in the university, back in the 1960s, I was not in the 1970s. We used to exchange information. There is a book on Jimma. By whom? By Lewis. Which Lewis? Herbert Lewis, because there were two Lewises. I am Lewis, who specializes in Somali studies. So that was how we were introduced to his book and his words to Jimma. That was an eye-opener. The only work on Oromos at that time. With this, later he was joined by Paul Baxter, and then years later, Asmarom Lagase, but his was everyone who passed through Addis Ababa University, who majored in history, sociology, anthropology, linguistics, has read this professor's book. And even all others who were interested in knowing what the history of Oromos, at that time on the history of Jimmas, everybody has read his book. With that, he set the tone for the studies for Oromo studies, for us, for Muhammad Hassan, who wrote a book on Jimma, on the Gibeah area. Professor Magamada, who wrote his BA thesis, MA thesis, and dissertation on Jimma and the Gera and so on. He opens the tone for all of us. We started with our studies with his work. So with that, we are very much honored, really, for your accepting our president's invitation to keynote our conference today. And his topic or his area of talk today is Decades of Dedication, Navigating Oromo Political Culture and Values since 1958. We are very honored to hear your experience and to learn from you what you have, the challenges that you passed through, and also your reflections on Oromo studies and Oromo politics since 1958 to today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Could I move this more to the center? If this is the, I'm going to use this one. Yeah. Okay. I just have to plug this in. Shama. Assumptive. Thank you so much, Professor Getahun, for that introduction. Dear friends, I must begin by expressing my deepest appreciation to the Oromo Studies Association and the organizing committee, and particularly to Dr. Kibete and Professor Getahun for inviting me to talk on this significant occasion. Most of my writing and research about Oromo life and politics was carried out many years ago, and I'm pleased that the committee remembers me at all. I'm very gratified by these honors and the chance to meet a younger generation of Oromo scholars and leaders, as well as to renew acquaintance with old friends, and a number of them are here right now. In the past, I've enjoyed wonderful, enriching, and pleasant times at OSA meetings. The last ones I attended were right here in Minneapolis in 2006, but I have great memories of earlier ones, both here as far back as 1986, as well as in Toronto and Atlanta and Washington, D.C., and it's very good to be here again. Thanks. As the title of my talk indicates, I've been involved with and concerned about the Oromo people since 1958. Although my most intense involvement was from 1958 to 66, when I carried out research in Jimma and then in the Ambo area, I had the opportunity to return for briefer periods in 1980, 1984, 1991, 1993, 2009, and finally, or perhaps not finally, but the last time in 2018. As a cultural anthropologist doing fieldwork, I had the opportunity to live for a year among the people of Jimma and for another year in and around Ambo. During my shorter visits, I had the chance to see the changes to those two places and their people, and I also witnessed significant events in Finfine. What I'll do in this talk is combine the story of my involvement with the Oromo peoples there and cultures and events with my understanding of Oromo political culture and values, something I've written about on a number of occasions, but excuse me. Thanks. In the past, I've spoken and written about my observation or belief from my own research and the writings of many others that there's an underlying theme and value in Oromo culture that stresses equality, peace, and harmony. I've written of a persistent pattern in Oromo socio-political organization that I called, and I apologize for the use of the term, Republican. But my use of that term has absolutely no connection to an American political party that claims that august name. My model is the Republic of Athens, as described by Aristotle. Now, my talk today will be a retrospective presentation of the things I've personally studied and witnessed through the years, especially related to the ideals and institutions that we call democratic as well as Republican. And I hope you won't mind if I indulge in some sentimental reminiscence. I think some of them may strike chords of recollection in members of the audience. I also hope that my description of political institutions and history will present topics for further discussion. Sorry. In 1958, it wasn't yet common for young Americans to go live in Africa. This is before the Peace Corps, much less in Ethiopia, and much less in Oromia. My acquaintance with Ethiopia started when I took a course as an undergraduate with a professor of linguistics who's a specialist in Gurage and Amharic. From Wolf Leslau, I learned of this vast land with so many languages and cultures and political groupings. Soon after, as a graduate student in anthropology at Columbia University, I became interested in the history and structure of kingdoms of all sorts, monarchies all over the world. In the 1950s, there was a growing literature in history and anthropology about what was called divine kingship in Africa, and also a more general historical and anthropological interest in the origins, structures, and histories of kingdoms everywhere in the world and throughout history. My concern with these intellectual problems and some familiarity with Ethiopia led me naturally to Jimma Bijifar. From travelers' accounts, we knew of the powerful king who had ruled in Jimma, even while 4 smaller Oromo kingdoms in the Gibe region had been swallowed up by Menelik II. Amba Jifar had been left in power within his realm until he died in 1932. So it was a natural fit for my interests. Fortunately for me, it also interested the leading member of the Ford Foundation committee that awarded me the grant for the research. So in November 1958, my 20-year-old wife, Marcia, and I found ourselves in Finfine, or Addis Ababa as it was called in those days, preparing for a year and a half of research. Before we left Finfine for Jimma, I had a long talk with Vince Lepisa at the University College, the forerunner of the current university. He told me that his research indicated that Gada had been universal and more or less uniform throughout the whole vast Oromo world before the Abyssinian conquests and the establishment of the Oromo kingdoms. I took that information with me into the field. At first, Marcia and I lived in a house at the edge of the city of Jimma, which by coincidence was opposite the Jimma Agricultural and Technical School, which is now the site of the College of Agriculture and Veterinary Medicine, and it's a place where some of you may have gone to school. After the rainy season, we moved up to a tent that we put in a fallow field belonging to Abba Milki on the slopes of the mountain leading to Jiren and to the Masera, the palace and the capital of Jimma Bijifar. 2 secondary school students who often accompanied me and assisted me were Jihad Abakoyas and Mesfina Bebe. I expect that some people in this audience knew them, perhaps in their later careers in government or perhaps Jihad, as the husband of Latifa Abba Jobir Abdullah. There may be some Oromo who are unhappy with the thought that their people had kingdoms in which powerful warlords and landowners ruled subjects, just like in Habash land. In fact, the Amhara Governor General of Jimma, Lieutenant Colonel Tamrat Yigizu, denied that Oromos could have had a kingdom. In his Jimma office, he told me that the Oromo had no kings, only Balabat. He said the Oromo were too primitive to have kings. Probably for that reason, when my book about the monarchy of Jimma Bajifar came out in 1965, it was banned from entry into the country of Ethiopia. I'm pleased to say that when I came back in 1980, I saw that the university library had 10 copies. Things had changed. With the aid of older men of Jimma who could still remember the monarchy or even participated in it as officials, I was able to reconstruct the organization and the history and the workings of the Jimma monarchy. The monarchy, of course, took the name of the king Abba Jifar, who had ruled for more than 50 years. I described it as a strongly centralized state in which the Moti, the king, held the reins of the reign through direct control over military force, taxation, and the power to appoint and dismiss governors and other officials who comprised the mechanisms of rule. The kings and the population had also converted to Islam, and that further weakened Gada, but it also prevented the king from becoming divine or sacred. In so many African countries where they have divine kingship, the ruler is limited in his power by powerful taboos. And this was not the case in Jimma. It didn't fit the pattern. Jimma did not fit the pattern of divine monarchy. Between rule by a powerful ruler and the new religion of Islam that superseded the earlier Wakafena, or the Oromo one, there was little room for Gada. However, I was told that during the earliest days of the kingdom, when the rulers were converting themselves from Abdullah or Moti to Moti, they were not yet Muslim. There were still assemblies of the elders in Jimma. They were held at Odahule, where they proclaimed the laws, Tumahule. It was under the leadership of the Abba Boku and the Hayu. Some informants knew of this, but it was long in their past. I was also told that the king had once slaughtered a bull there when there was some crisis. In addition, recently Magersa Ragasa and Dejeni Gamachu have written about Odahule as one of the centers for the Jiga Institution for conflict resolution today. We'll come back to this later. I understand Odahule is also the location of a medical center. Through reading accounts by European travelers and missionaries, I learned and wrote about the origins of Oromo kingdoms. They arose as a result of the constant wars during which the Abdullah war leaders became more wealthy and more powerful than the Abba Boku, or the Hayu, and the assemblies, the Chafe. They became Abalafa, landowners, and therefore Gada in various communities and districts was undercut by these powerful men who were able to stay in their positions while hostilities lasted. They could amass followers with their wealth, ignore the Gada assemblies and their elected leaders. When the most powerful of them had defeated their rivals, they were on the brink of monarchy. Professor Muhammad Hassan writes of this, stressing the role of men who became wealthy controlling trade routes as merchants. After doing research about a kingdom, I wanted to learn about political life in the areas in which the war leaders and wealthy landowners were actually conquered by Menelek's allies before they could become rulers. So in 1965, I intended to do research in the West, perhaps in Horobudru. But in Ambo one day, I was stopped by two young men who asked me, "You American? Peace Corps?" They were Tesfaye Hundessa and Derebe Daba. When I explained what I was doing, they said, "You'd be interested in Damfa. He rules like a king in the countryside around here." And then they said, "He's a great spirit." A spirit? I wondered, how does a spirit rule? they continued, Kenyasmach Faisa is really powerful. So I was confused, a Kenyasmach or a spirit, who was ruling? But it wasn't before long that I unexpectedly encountered Kenyasmach Faisa Inika and his retinue along the road to Finfine. And I discovered that the Oromos in this area had developed a new form of leadership, a new local level political system based on belief in Ayana. I soon understood, I said that, yeah. In this area, Ayana, a term which is well known in Afan Oromo and throughout Oromo land, but with numerous meanings. In this area, Ayana are spirits that can have immediate impact on human beings and their lives for good or bad. And these Ayana can catch hold of, kapsisa, possess, take over, and control certain human beings who serve as the medium through which they can speak and be spoken to. And for this purpose, the term that Asafa used before, kalu, was repurposed. Kalu was no longer the central spiritual official in the Gauda system, as in, I understand, Borana, but they were spirit mediums, a term that we know from all over the world and we use as spirit mediums. They are the medium through which the Ayana, the spirits, can speak and be spoken to. And the Ayana in the area around Ambo and east and west were ubiquitous and powerful. Many of you may be very much aware of this institution, may have relatives involved with it, may be involved yourselves, and I look forward to updates to my knowledge. The Mecha Oromo in this area built the Alu institution I found it from at least Holata as far as Ambo and beyond, and Karl Eller Knudsen in his book, he found the same system much further west. Alice Morton reported it east of Finfine. Many Mecha Oromo were led by these mediums, some of whom came to have great influence over wide areas and many thousands of people. At least until the Derg and the Zemecha seriously damaged it. Here was another form of Oromo political system that had developed in the 20th century. Knudsen and I both believe that the institution was only a few generations old, filling the power vacuum that was created after the Abadullah and the Abalafa lost theirs under the control of the Abyssinians. Now, I have no time to expand on the nature and power of this institution. I'm sorry, I have actually some very fine photographs, but I did not have time. I didn't think we'd have time to do it, showing the size of the crowds and showing some of the activities and the influence of the Kalu. In annual ceremonies, Kenyasmach Faisa Inika could have as many as 10 or 15,000 people coming to celebrate at his various galma being the term for the temples or temple complex. And he had them spread over 70 kilometers. But beyond that, as we'll see, they also were the central place for conflict resolution. Anyhow, this is a political, excuse me one second. I'd be happy to expand on the ways in which important Kalu, not minor, now of course the term Kalu can also refer to a medium from a family that has a spirit. It can refer to individuals who are possessed and other people come to hear about their fates from them. But I'm talking about ones who have become so big that they have thousands of followers, huge temple complexes, and many activities they're involved with. So, but let me go on with more than I saw when I was working in the Ambo area. I want to argue that there's a presence of a political style or a political culture or values among the Oromo that I saw both in Jimma and in Ambo, and that I have read about, that I call Republican, if I may go back to that term, in its approach to organizing social life, activity, conflict resolution at the neighborhood and group level. I witnessed a constant round of activities in the Ambo area. Aside from the many events at the temple complexes, there were constant meetings of the Burial and Mutual Aid Society, or IDDER, and not only monthly, but more frequently to settle complaints and problems. There were numerous gatherings of IKUB, the Rotating Credit Association, and of Mahabar, fraternities. There were almost constant Arara sessions to try to make peace and settle quarrels between neighbors, husbands and wives, and others. There was plenty of opportunity to witness people in action. Now, I'm describing something that many of you already know from firsthand experience, and everyone will have heard about them. Some are operating in the United States and elsewhere in Oromo and Ethiopian diaspora in various forms. You may belong to one or another. It's interesting that these associations that I speak of, IDDER, IKUB, and Mahabar, despite being relatively recent borrowings from other groups, have come to play important roles in the life of these communities. And I think it's because they fit so well with the Oromo political culture, with a stress upon voluntary association, self-rule, debate, leadership by elected officials. Conflict resolution, settling disputes, is a central activity. I passed many, many long hours in the Ambo area, sitting under trees, listening to such sessions. Despite the desire for harmony, peace, naga, people fall short of the ideal. They default on their obligations and come into conflict with their neighbors, kin, and compatriots. And it's necessary to heal the breach, find reconciliation, and restore this peace. I wrote about this in detail in articles based on my observations in Ambo and Jimma. And 60 years ago, there's a very nice recent article describing a parallel institution in Jimma today by Magersa Ragasa and Dejeni Gamachu, or Jiga. They witnessed at Odahule, what they witnessed is a parallel to what I saw around Ambo in 1965, 66. When a dispute arises, the first resort is to call in mediators at the local level. They'll hold an arara, where the litigants plead their cases before 3 to 8 or more of their neighbors. Certain men will be asked to preside because their judgments are respected. These individuals are not necessarily old or rich, but they are noted for their altruism, their willingness to give their time, their knowledge of custom and precedent, and their good sense. These hearings are considered, as I understood, meetings of equals, or kite, for the purpose of reconciling neighbors, kin, and others in conflict. The term used most often for these sessions is arara, or reconciliation. They're not trials. They don't aim to punish, but to make peace. The parties to the disputes, their witnesses, and the mediators sit outside under a tree, listen to various parties discuss the case at length. And it's their practice to send each of the litigants some distance away while their opponents are speaking. After discussion, the mediators will try to agree on a course of reconciliation, a reasonable solution which they hope the disputants will accept as the best deal they can hope for. If no settlement is reached at a given session, they may call another one involving still more respected elders, maybe more important men, and try again. If this fails, there are no more sanctions available at this level. However, there's a higher level of court, those sanctified and overseen by the spirits, the Ayana, and organized by the Kalu. And these courts, which in Ambo are called Boku or Yebo, are presided over by specially appointed judges called Danyi, chosen by their neighbors to serve in this capacity. They are officially installed in office by the Kalu. The Danyi apply the same principles of reconciliation and compromise as the mediators at the lower levels. They attempt to discern the truth of a case from the litigants and their witnesses, and then to redress the wrongs and reconcile the parties. These judges don't have force to back their decisions, but they do have a powerful ally, the spirits. The courts are on sacred ground, the home of the Ayana, spirits that care about truth and right behavior, that can differentiate between chabu, sin, the unjust, morally wrong, and Guga, truth. If a party to a case refuses to settle, the petitioner can directly curse their recalcitrant. If this doesn't work, his or her only recourse is to accuse their opponent in the government court with all the difficulties that that entails. So at this point, I want to generalize a little bit about what I think of the system and values before I go on to talk about some changes that I saw. Based on what I had learned from Jima in 1963, I wrote about an ideal pattern for political organization, and I called it Republican. And I believe it underlay the monarchy as well. I assumed that it was based on Gada, although it was a monarchy and not Gada. This was my generalized summary. I'm quoting here from the book. Political membership and leadership was based largely on common residence and on achievement, or what sociologists would call universalistic criteria. Officers were elected. They served strictly limited terms and couldn't succeed themselves. And they held functionally specific positions with defined tasks. There was also an insistence on thrashing out problems in open council. And here, actually, I'm talking about Gada. This was a significantly different basis for a kingdom. That is, I found these same elements in the kingdom, except that there was a king and there were governors and so on. But insistence on thrashing out problems in open council meetings. This was a significantly different basis for a kingdom than the religious and kinship foundation of divine monarchy, as described for so much of Africa. What I next saw in Western Mecha just emphasized these traits and more so. So now I want to generalize about Oromo political values more widely. First of all, I'm going to mention 6 or 7 elements. Territoriality versus kinship. That is the basis of most political activity and political groupings is based on neighborhood, on proximity, on being in the same territory, rather than kinship. This is different from so much of Africa, where the literature tells us the relation by birth, one's lineage, one's clan determines so much of one's official position, of one's who one's social groups will be, who you will be together with. Secondly, election. Not that common necessarily, but within Oromo life, I found organizations tend to have officers elected for limited terms, and the office is not considered the possession of the office holder, as it might be if it were inherited chiefdom. Election is an important element in Oromo political culture at different levels and in different organizations. 3, elected official offices have different tasks and areas of authority. For example, the Ababoku versus the Abasa, the treasurer, Abadullah or Moti, the war leader, Abaule, the keeper of the cattle in Jima. In Ambo, the Ider has both a presiding officer and a prosecutor, both of whom are elected. 4, assembly. Jaffe is vital to meet, probably under an Oda tree, there may be one around here, if possible, is a central principle. Problems, government rules, conflict resolution are handled in assemblies. The size and the scope of the assembly varies, but it's a central element, as it was in Athens. 5, law. And the idea of law is central, both customary, ada, and sera, which is legislated or decided upon in assembly and proclaimed as law, sera tuma. Rules are argued on, changed, set down, and declared. All the organizations from Gada to Ider have a set of formal rules and procedures, also Maber. Kite. In Western Showa, at least, I encountered the notion that all participants in a group are to be considered and treated as equals, even though in reality, some are certainly richer and more powerful than others. Some are more skilled and have higher status. The participation and input of all are permitted, even expected, and all have equal responsibilities to the group. 7, the insistence on peace, harmony, Naga. There's a high value placed upon Naga and reconciliation, Ararsa, within the political community. Makoria Bulcha wrote about this in 2015. Sorry he isn't here now. The highest value is placed on the maintenance and restoration of peace, healing the breach among people, kin and neighbors, and within communities and associations. Over the years, I made a point of saying that even where Gada had long been gone, barely remembered, as in Jimma and in the Ambo area, the principles for public behavior, for political activities that derive from Gada existed in many forms throughout Oromia. Now that there's been an opportunity to reorganize political and other activity throughout that land, I wonder how and in what ways and where, what elements of Gada political and governing behavior have been put into practice. And I want to distinguish this from ritual aspects like Buddha ceremonies. Now, I want to turn to something more recent. In 2018, I was back in Jimma, and I was treated royally by scions of the royal family, Abdul Latif Abogero and Abdul Qadir, or Pele Abogero. Sadly, a young boy had died, and Abdul Latif took me. We went together to the house of mourning. In the Adarash, we call it a Kuta Simana, in the house where there were perhaps 40 older Muslim men, serious men with turbans and henna in their beards. And together with these devout Muslims and the descendant of the monarch, there was a man introduced to me as the Abagada of Addoyyee. 60 years after I had learned that there had once been an Ababoku and a Hayu in Addoyyee, but long since there had not been. So needless to say, I was both surprised and pleased. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to speak to the Abagada of Addoyyee, but perhaps someone in the audience can tell us afterwards. The next day, I was honored to give a talk at Jimma University, and I was giving the tie that I'm proudly wearing now. I would not be wearing a tie if it weren't from Jimma University. So, in the time I have left, I want to share two experiences that I had in the years after my field research. On June 8th, 1991, I landed in Bole with the first commercial plane to enter Ethiopia after the Derg's army collapsed and the government fell. It was an interesting and exciting time and potentially dangerous. There were many trigger-happy TPLF soldiers all over Finfine and in Jimma, and some of them just children. It was a time to witness the start of new political developments. I was very fortunate that Mirgisa Kaba, an MA student at AAU in those days, was able to take time off to work with me during the 5 weeks I was there. When Ihadeg took over, the exiles of many nationalities returned, among them Lencho Letta, of course. He and I had previously met in Khartoum secretly in 1980, and in London a few days before I left in 1991. The hotels in Finfine were full of old friends and opponents, old school chums seeing each other after years of living in other countries, and also opponents seeing each other. For the first time, the many ethno-national parties could openly meet and organize. They had never been permitted either under the Emperor Haile Selassie or under the Derg rule. In early July, there was a famous charter conference that promised so much, but resulted in so little. On the morning of July 6th, or perhaps it was the 7th, a correspondent for the Christian Science Monitor, who was in the same hotel I was, Bob Press, asked me if I wanted to join him at the old post office for an Oromo meeting. I had no idea what awaited. But when we arrived, we found Jarsa from 10 major sections of the great Oromo nation arrayed along the dais at the front of the hall like this. There they were from Arsi, Bale, Borana, Guji, Harar, Ilubabor, Raya, Shoa, Wallaga, and Wolo. Tilahun Gamta defines Jarsa as arbitrator, judge, mediator, or peacemaker, as well as old male human. And they were there for Ararsa, Jarsuma, mediation, arbitration. They were there to try to bring together to make peace between the OLF and the OPDO, the competing claimants to leadership and representation of the Oromo nation. Fortunately, Makuria Bulcha was sitting right behind me and explained a lot. I may be wrong, but it seems likely that this was the first time that so many of the great Oromo nation ever met in one place, at least after about 1600. However, Ninsa Lapisa told me that they had all met in 1965 under Mecha-Tulama auspices. Someone else said there was a great show in 1978 in the National Theater that brought many together. In any case, oh, by the way, in 1966, I was told by a passing student of anthropology that he was going to a meeting of Mecha-Tulama Association. And I said, can I go along with you? And he said, no. And so I lost the opportunity to go with him. He dropped out, never published anything, so there we go. But I did hear in 1966 of a meeting of the Mecha-Tulama Association. That's all I did hear. What struck me about the proceedings at the old post office was that they were carried out exactly as I watched time and again around Ambo, whether in the Galma or before the Ayana in the Addoyyee, or between a man and his wife under a tree in front of his neighbors. I wasn't aware of any disturbances, no speaking out of turn, no disrespect for the Abajarsa or the process. Furthermore, while one side spoke, the other side was sent out of the room, just as in the least consequential Arara that I had witnessed. They invoked the search for harmony, Naga and truth, Nuga. Here at the end of the 20th century, we were watching principles of Oromo democracy being played out. I don't want to sound starry-eyed and naive. As you know, as in so many other cases, there was no satisfactory solution to the confrontation. This moment of historic importance in the struggle for power that would determine so much of the future of Oromia and Ethiopia. Here are a few of the people I noted among the crowd. For the OLF, Galasa Dilbo, Lench Oleta, Ibsa Gutama, Zagea Asfal, Tilahun Gamta, Dr. Tadessa Eba, Haila Mariam Gamada, Barot Umsa, Abba Bia, Abba Jobir of Jimma, Dinsa Lapisa, Colonel Alamu Kitesa, Dima Dabale. The leader for the OPDO was Kuma Dumeksa. It was quite an event. I have one final experience to share. Several days later, there was a great banquet in the Gion Hotel held at the invitation of Abba Bia Abba Jobir and the Jimma Royal Society, at which Oromo men and women from all over the empire met, ate, and talked and talked and talked. Ambassador Mude of Kenya, of Borana Oromo, was there, as was the leader of the Sidama Liberation Movement, and Sultan Ali Mira of Ausa. I was also pleased to see at least 4 people associated with the University of Wisconsin at Madison in attendance, including Dr. Tadessa Eba, who received his PhD in genetics from friends of mine. It was a grand occasion. There were many speeches and guarded sense of optimism. It was a beautiful occasion, or so it seemed to me, this outsider. In conclusion, I have 2 related questions to ask of you. It's not that I expect any easy answers, but it's something to think about. To what extent has Gada been put back into operation in Oromia? In what ways, what aspects, and in what areas? And secondly, with or without Gada, how much of the Republican and democratic spirit that underlies Oromo culture is currently alive and useful in today's political life? Thank you for listening. Thanks. Yeah. How do I do with time? Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So next we'll begin the OSA award ceremony. It will be moderated by the OSA board chair, Gerihun Benti. The time allotted for the award ceremony will be 15 minutes.
Thank you, Sotume. As you all know, every year OSA recognizes and awards those distinguished people who have served it, and also who have distinguished themselves in scholarship and in other areas. These awards are given to three categories of people: student award, award of distinction, and a lifetime achievement award. We don't even take 15 minutes, Sotume. We begin with the student award, who will be announced by Ateetee Sotume herself.
Thank you. So with the Student Award, we are pleased to present Wadi Ahmed as the nominee for the OSA's 2024 Outstanding Student Award. Wadi's remarkable activism and leadership within the Oromo community, particularly in the Washington, D.C. area, makes him an exemplary candidate for this recognition. So this recognition was also nominated by Comparative, which is the OSA president, and his nomination was built upon multiple points. Firstly, Wadi has been an energetic and influential member of the Oromo youth leadership in the Washington, D.C. area, consistently contributing to our community's growth and cohesion over the last few years. As a member of the OYA board currently, I can add that he is a proactive individual, ensuring that the Oromo community can prosper, allowing for the Oromo youth to grow into their culture. Secondly, he has been deeply involved in a variety of initiatives aimed at promoting Oromo culture, including engaging performances on social media and participating in events that bring together the Oromo community in the region. Some examples of these performances can be during Osfana, Irecha, culture shows, and more. As a student at the University of Maryland, Wadi has been a key figure in facilitating community events on campus. He has used his role as one of the student leaders to secure venues for significant cultural events, such as the Irecha celebrations, and has been organizing cultural shows that have enriched the university's multicultural environment. His efforts in securing a venue at the University of Maryland for the OSA's 2024 annual conference is a testament to his dedication to the Oromo Studies Association and its mission. He was also one of the panelists on the youth panel at OSA's 2023 annual conference. Wadi's role in Bate Urgesa's family support fundraising campaign has showcased his maturity and unwavering commitment to the Oromo cause, embodying the spirits and leadership and community service that the Outstanding Student Award seeks to honor. As you can see, there is so much that amounts to why Wadi deserves this award. Wadi Ahmed's decision or dedication to the Oromo community and his proactive approach to leadership and service makes him a deserving candidate for the OSA's 2024 Outstanding Student Award. His actions not only benefit our current community, but also pave the way for future generations to engage in the Oromo cause. With that, I would like to present Wadi Ahmed with the 2024 OSA Outstanding Student Award.
Congratulations. The award, the plaque is coming from the card, so congratulations. You represent the generation of OSA young students who will take OSA from us. So if you want to say something,
Okay. First off, أقولتني أفهم الموتيكون فيكتا, so I'm gonna say this in English. So first off, thank you all. And I know I lost my voice a bit, so forgive me for that. First off, thank you to the Oromo Studies Association for nominating me for this award. It's an incredible honor to really come out and show support for such an organization that really helps contribute to exemplifying the studies and scholarship of Oromo studies, one that has historically been underrepresented and one that really needs to be represented a lot more. My involvement with the Oromo community has been since 2021, where I really started getting involved thanks to a couple of my friends. And that's also helped me in my own personal journey of learning my own culture and learning where I come from, as well as contributing to a cause that I believe is greater than myself. But of course, this is not really, this is not the work of one individual. And for me, being able to be standing on this pedestal is not something that I could have done alone. So there's a lot of people that I genuinely want to thank for, helping contribute to getting me to this point, especially my friends Adam Lanza and Dumbushe, who have really helped me really grow into my character and my Oromo culture. And yeah, so I really want to thank them and then to thank everybody who's helped me, Sutume and Jitu, the whole Oromo community. It's a really great honor as well. So I hope to, I just graduated the University of Maryland with my bachelor's in information science. So I'm going to be going back to University of Maryland in the fall for my grad school program and my master's of science and information systems. So of course that's on more on the tech side, but I really hope to use that platform and use the things that I gain to see whatever ways I can help contribute to exemplifying and expanding the Oromo diaspora here, as well as expanding the community back home to make sure that we're in a much stronger place in our community. So, with that, I don't really have that much to say, but Galatomi, thank you very much for the nomination and for all of you guys to show up. I really appreciate it all, and I'm very proud to be here and always representing my Oromo community. Galatomi, thank you.
As I mentioned earlier, this comes with a huge responsibility, and you represent the generation of Oromo students that will take charge of OSA very soon. The ride is very short, though. Okay, thank you very much. Then in the next category, we award award of distinction, who is going to be introduced by Professor Asfabayene.
I'm talking to the next awardee who resides in Oromia, and he's online. At the end, I will hopefully give him a few minutes. It's my honor to introduce OSA Distinction Award for 2024, which goes to Obbo Abdisa Bancha Jarra for integrating Afan Oromo in Google platform. Abdisa graduated from the Haramaya University with a degree in information technology, then joined a software company based in the US as an IT expert. He later joined Ethio Telecom, where he worked with a wide range of Ethiopian languages. In 2015, with 5 others, he branched out to independently develop online language applications. Oromo language was on their mind. The team took up on developing and bringing up Oromo language for international use. Abdisa applied for and secured a sponsorship from Google Africa Developer Scholarship. After about 6 months of training, some of his colleagues introduced him to crowdsourcing. Thus, the idea of Oromo language on Google was born. Suggestions came from discussion forums and from the crowdsourced community at large. After failing 4 times to get Oromo language accepted into Google infrastructure without network, with no expertise, by sheer effort, he finally succeeded. Afaan Oromo can now be utilized on Google, enabling Oromo speakers to connect, express themselves, and engage with the digital world seamlessly. This development signifies a major step towards the growth of Oromo language. The integration of Afaan Oromo in Google presents a vast array of opportunities for digital business. Businesses can now tap into Oromo market and efficiently and effectively reach a large, previously untapped audience and has the potential to create numerous job opportunities. It showcases the rich cultural heritage, history, and achievements of our people. Today, Abdissa and his colleagues are trying to bring other minority languages of Ethiopia into the Google fold. OSA is proud to shine a spotlight on Obo Abdissa Bancha Jara and his colleagues for leading the effort of revolutionizing Afaan Oromo with Google. Obo Abdissa is in Oromia now, as I mentioned earlier. He's online. Obo Abdissa, nadagesu. Obo Abdissa, nadagesu. Hello? Daqiiqaa tokko lama qabda dubbachuu dandeessa?
Isin dhaga'utti jira. Baay'ee ulfaadha. Kabaja guddaa akkasiitiif hedduu naaf galatooma. Ulfaadha kabajama.
Hayyee. Odeensii walgahii OSAarraan si bilbilaadha. Warri OSAarra jiranillee amma hundi si dhagaa jiru galatoomii siin jenna nutis. Hayyee nagaatti.
In recognition of his extraordinary contribution to the development of Afaan Oromo, making it accessible on the Google Global Digital Platform. All right, the last category is Lifetime Achievement Award. I'm not going to say anything about it, but I will call upon Professor Guruma Gamada to introduce to announce our Lifetime Achievement Awardee of this year. Professor Guruma.
Ifamanagra. I was supposed to say good morning as it was scheduled, but now I think it's afternoon. So I'll be presenting as already an Achievement Award awardee. It's my great pleasure to present to you Professor Emeritus Herbert S. Lewis as this year's OSA Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. We have already heard from Professor Lewis a summary of his work, his careful observations, which is a summary of a long and decades-long work on the Oromo, research on the Oromo. For the sake of time, I'll just highlight a few things, a few parts of his work before the award is presented. I have no doubt that all of us are excited to see Professor Herbert Lewis among us today at this conference. Professor Herbert Lewis had conducted research on the Oromo for over 6 decades before some of us, or most of us, were not even born. He started doing research on the Oromo and continued to do continues to until today. Professor Herbert Lewis, a Professor Emeritus of Anthropology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he served for over 35 years, I believe. And also before that, he had lectured and worked at other institutions, but Wisconsin-Madison is his home, where he did most of his research and teaching over 35 years. As OSA members and researchers of Oromo studies know, his extensive publications and the scholarly early works have been the foundation, or made the foundation for the development of Oromo studies. Professor Herbert Lewis is one of the pioneers of Oromo studies who started his, as you have already heard, started his early research in Jimma. He started his work on the Oromo when Oromo studies was officially or unofficially ignored or suppressed by other Ethiopian scholars. In the late 1950s, when he started his work on the Oromo, Ethiopian studies was dominated by what we call the Orientalists, or who allied Ethiopian studies with the studies of the Semitic speakers, and oriented the whole Ethiopian studies towards the Middle East and the Mediterranean region instead of the rest of the African continent. In such studies, or the scholars who dominated Ethiopian studies at the time, areas or subjects the Oromo were neglected. But in the late 1950s and 1960s, Professor Lewis and other young anthropologists had changed that trajectory and refocused scholarship, or initiated a new scholarship on the Oromo. Professor Lewis at the time was among very few young anthropologists, such as Harold Fleming, Asmoro Blekesa, and a few others. As you all know, in fact, Ethiopian studies, in the early Ethiopian studies, and even to some extent today, Oromo subjects are less discussed. Actually, during the first Conference of Ethiopian Studies in 1959, no Oromo subjects was discussed, maybe one or two if you look at it again. But in 1963, during the second Ethiopian Studies Conference organized in Manchester, England, Professor Lewis was one of the young anthropologists who attended and presented his work on the Oromo. In fact, together with Asmoro Blekesa, they were the two young scholars. Paul Baxter was also there, who in fact attended the first conference as well. Lewis continued his work in the subsequent years and attended another Ethiopian Studies Conference, the third, in Finfinne, Addis Ababa in 1966, where he again presented more of his work there. And in subsequent other meetings of Ethiopian studies, he was among the very few scholars representing the Oromo side of the story, while all others, in fact, focused on subjects that related to only the Abyssinian history, archaeology, and Ethio-Semitic language, and not, in fact, the rest of the people in the Ethiopian Empire. Besides the geographical focus of Professor Lewis's work on Jimma and the Oromo in the south, his and the works of other anthropologists who focused on the south was qualitatively different from that of the other Ethiopian studies. Their methodology was more favorable to study people with limited or no or written sources. They were equipped in their graduate training. They were equipped with the new methodology of oral traditions and how to use it more effectively to study people like the Oromo, while other scholars previously focused only where they could find some written sources. Actually, even if they existed in places like in Oromia, those scholars actually did not care to search for them, although in fact they existed. A few works have been done, or surveys have been done in the southern part, in the Oromo area, in the 1920s and 30s by a group of archaeologists, French archaeologists, and some German anthropologists, particularly those associated with the Frobenius Institute in Germany. But their approach and their way of investigation was much different from the tracks that Professor Lewis and other anthropologists followed from the late 1950s on. As a young researcher, Herbert Lewis chose the Oromo studies, selected Jimma as he told us earlier, and also decided to stay in the field at the research site for 18 months, while earlier other researchers actually only visited any place they studied or the people they studied only for a few weeks and made quick interviews, mostly with the elders, and moved on. So their studies or their conclusions were made only on brief visits. While in this case, was Professor Herbert Lewis lived in the community, observed, or as it was then called, as a participant observer, learned the language also. This is a new technique that anthropologists used at the time. And as a result of this, the outcome of his work is more accurate and very instructive and educational, that broadened our knowledge of Oromo culture and history. Its stay in Jimma resulted in a book, An Oromo Monarchy, Jimma Abajifar, 1830 to 1932, which was actually for many of us the first book that we started with the study of our own culture from a foreigner who stayed in the community, studied and observed and wrote a very accurate one. I've read this book several times, and I'm amazed how accurate it is, that you cannot find that many things, in fact, that he misinterpreted, almost nothing that he misinterpreted, while that's not the case with many other scholars, particularly who are in a rush in studying and observing the people. So that's a very valuable work and very accessible for a generation of Oromo scholars. Earlier, before the publication of his book, Professor Lewis had published articles since at least 1958. One of such early publication is the historical problem in Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa, which focused on the Oromo. And in I'm just referring to only a few of them. And in 1966, he published an article entitled "The Origin of the Galla and the Somali." The Galla, of course, the name that was commonly used at the time. And this article, I particularly refer to this article because it was so accurate and in fact very foundational, that any scholar who had studied the origin of the Oromo, in fact, has not really changed the conclusion that Herbert Lewis has reached in 1966. There are many others. In fact, you can look at the long list of his publications, which includes not only Oromo, but also, in fact, native indigenous Americans here. Particularly after his retirement, he continued to work there. So without taking much more time, I ask you to join me in congratulating Professor Herbert Lewis on this achievement, on this lifetime achievement, and also wish him more prosperous years. And Professor Lewis, congratulations.
Thank you, Professor Guluma. You opened our eyes, you inspired us, and you deserve this award. And this award comes with a $500 honorarium and all the benefits and the privileges that OSA can offer in your lifetime. Congratulations, Professor. We love you, and the Oromo people love you. Thank you.
Galatoma and Waknisifinia Kenu and Varakar Gada and anything else I could say. This was so beautiful. I really appreciate Professor Kaluma's words and the award. It's very beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, I have to apologize for skipping a lunch. We will skip a lunch now. We'll continue to the last panel so that we'll save time for the business meeting as well as for the SACA. The final day was summer. That's why we make half day for 3 days. So today we'll continue to introduce the next panel. I apologize. In case you need to have coffee or bread, this is provided out there. Take it out and bring them in inside with apology. And I'll pass it to them.
Congratulations to all the awardees. Your accomplishments have not gone unseen. Thank you for everything you all have done. So now we'll be moving on to panel 5, roundtable. It'll be moderated by Berhane Kabeda. Please give her a warm welcome. I will be moderating the time, and the time allocated for this section is 1 hour and 15 minutes.
Let's give 5 minutes. Okay. Sa'aatiin nuu kenname akka nu jalaan dhumne akka yeroodhaan jalqabdu oduu nu teessanii gaariidha. While we are waiting for other people to come back, I would like to invite Dr. Mohammed Hassan, Addoyyee Kabane, and DJ Tufa here to the podium, please. This is taking a little bit of our time. People are Hmm? Nora. He was in the back. This is too small to introduce Dr. Mohammed. He sent something. Yeah. I thought he sent it to both of us. No, look down here. Here is, and it was Mohammed's. Shoot, I didn't send it. Can you remove it? Oh, that's the thing. That's the thing. Okay. Also some. That's it. And I sent it together. I sent that. That's mine. And Dr. Muhammad. And Dr. Muhammad says a bit different. He says he taught that African American. Add this before that one. Okay. Okay, I'm copying it, and I'm just going to send it to your messages. Okay. I thought I did. It said here it started. Here is, and it was going to be. Obviously got interrupted.